30 billion in fake francs, buried in a luxury villa. That's how the largest counterfeit money operation in Burkina Faso's history came to light. But behind this staggering headline lies a story far more explosive, a plot not just to destabilize an economy, but to quietly stage an economic coup against an entire nation. It all began not in a war room or secret agency, but at a quiet desk inside the central bank, where a sharp-eyed young woman noticed something off. Her name was Aminata Sawadogo. A junior clerk with no rank or reputation, just an intuitive sense honed by years of counting bills. The texture was right. The color perfect. But something in her gut screamed, this money isn't real. She brought the bills to her supervisor. Skepticism turned into silence. Then panic. Because Aminata was right, the notes were counterfeit. But not just any counterfeit. These bills were nearly flawless. So precise, they bypassed most detection systems. If she hadn't acted, they could have flowed into the market unnoticed, infecting the financial bloodstream of a fragile economy. When the news reached the office of President Ibrahim Traoré, his reaction was swift and furious. This is not ordinary counterfeiting, he declared. This is economic warfare. And he was right. Over the next 15 days, what unfolded was a gripping campaign of intelligence, surveillance, and midnight raids. What they uncovered was a professional-grade printing operation buried inside a decrepit factory, backed by elites, politicians, and, perhaps most shockingly, foreign powers. 30 billion francs of fake currency, ready to be injected into the economy to sow inflation, chaos, and revolt. This is the story of how Burkina Faso stood on the brink of collapse and fought back. How a seemingly minor discovery triggered a nationwide manhunt. How an African leader confronted both internal betrayal and external manipulation. And how this operation became a rallying cry for a continent awakening to a new kind of warfare, not fought with guns, but with money. Let us take you deep into the conspiracy, the confessions, and the resistance that turned fake currency into a national awakening. It was just another routine day at the Central Bank of Burkina Faso when Aminata Sawadogo began her shift. A meticulous clerk in her late 20s, she had spent countless hours handling banknotes, developing a natural instinct for their feel, their weight, even their faint scent. But on this particular morning, something felt wrong. The bills she was counting looked perfect. The watermark glistened, the serial numbers aligned, the texture exactly as it should be. But Aminata hesitated. She flipped one note, then another. Her fingers paused over the edges. She couldn't explain it, but the notes felt lifeless. Too perfect. Artificial. She didn't panic. Instead, she followed procedure and brought the notes to her supervisor. "Sir," she said calmly, "I think these are fake." Jean-Claude Caboret, the bank's regional manager, barely looked up at first. "We receive dozens of reports every month," he said. "What makes you so sure?" "Feel them," she insisted. "They pass the basic checks, but they're wrong." Caboret indulged her. His casual glance became a frown, then full concentration. A quiet tension filled the room. A senior technician was summoned. Then a second opinion. By the end of the afternoon, a confidential lab test confirmed Aminata's suspicion. These were counterfeit notes, but made with such precision that only high-level forensic equipment could detect them. This wasn't street-level forgery. This was professional grade. Caboret's expression darkened. He understood the implications immediately. "If this leaks," he whispered, "people will panic. They'll rush to withdraw their savings. The banks could collapse." Without waiting another hour, he contacted Finance Minister Laurent Gbagbo. "Keep calm," Bongo said on the encrypted line. "Don't speak to anyone. I'll brief the president." Within the hour, President Ibrahim Traoré had the report in hand. He slammed his fist against the desk. "This isn't petty crime," he growled. "This is a coordinated attack. Someone wants to devalue our currency, crash our economy, and crush our people." In that moment, a full-scale response was born. Traoré convened an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. Ministers of Finance, Defense, Intelligence, and Banking were summoned. "What we face," he said to the gathered officials, "is not just fake money. It is economic sabotage. And we will treat it like war." Outside the public eye, inside government bunkers and surveillance centers, Burkina Faso prepared for a new kind of battle, against an invisible enemy using paper as their weapon. And at the center of it all was one woman's instinct, a moment of doubt, and the sharp eyes of Aminata Sawadogo. President Ibrahim Traoré didn't waste a second. By nightfall, the National Security Council was assembled in the presidential compound. The atmosphere was tense. Around the table sat the Minister of Defense, the Interior Minister, the Governor of the Central Bank, and the Chief of National Intelligence, Commandant Origo. The topic: the counterfeit money threat and its implications for national stability. Traoré opened with no pleasantries. "This is not about fake money," he said, his voice sharp. "This is an economic coup. Someone is trying to flood our market, collapse our currency, and turn the people against the state. We must respond as if we are under attack, because we are." Commandant Origo stood and presented his findings. "In the last 2 months, we have detected a sharp, unexplained increase in cash flow," he said. "It's as if money is being injected into the market from nowhere." The central bank governor confirmed the pattern. "We thought it was a result of informal economy activities," he admitted. "Now we know. It was counterfeit, and highly sophisticated." Traoré's tone turned grave. "They are not just printing money. They are inflating the economy, eroding public trust, and preparing conditions for unrest. This is stage 1 of an economic insurgency." He ordered the formation of a top-secret task force. Its composition was unique: financial experts, elite intelligence analysts, and special forces operatives. Their mission was clear: track the origin of the counterfeit currency, dismantle the network behind it, and do it all under a complete veil of secrecy. Captain Ibrahim Diallo, a forensic finance officer, was put in charge of tracking the materials used in the counterfeit bills. His team focused on the type of paper and ink, 2 elements difficult to replicate without access to high-level equipment and supply chains. Their first major breakthrough came from customs records. Diallo reported. In the last 6 months, a significant quantity of high-quality banknote paper and specialized printing ink entered Burkina Faso. All were legally declared under vague business purposes. One name kept reappearing on the import logs: a company called Primerie Modernesse, supposedly a local printing house. The owner, François Wedrao, had recently acquired a luxury villa, several imported cars, and made unusually large transactions. Traoré's eyes narrowed. "This is our entry point. Place him under full surveillance: phones, meetings, movements. Watch everything. But he must not suspect a thing." With this directive, the covert operation officially began. Every move of François Wedrao would be tracked. Every clue would be dissected. Burkina Faso was now in a silent war, one where victory would mean preserving national stability, and failure could mean total collapse. For a week, Burkina Faso's intelligence services followed François Wedrao like a shadow. Surveillance teams tracked his every move. His calls were intercepted, his meetings monitored, his purchases logged. What emerged was a man living far beyond his declared income, a luxury villa in Ouagadougou's elite district, multiple imported vehicles, and frequent late-night trips to the outskirts of the city. It was on one of those nights, just after midnight, when he made a crucial mistake. A black SUV left Ouedraogo's villa. Inside was the man himself, driving alone. The surveillance team reported in. Target is on the move, heading toward the industrial zone. That zone was full of old warehouses and factories, many abandoned, few monitored. Captain Diallo's voice crackled through the secure line. This could be it. President Traoré had made a decision earlier that day. He would personally oversee the takedown operation. If we're going to destroy this network, I want to look them in the eyes, he had said. By 2:00 a.m., a convoy of 20 blacked-out military vehicles moved silently through the city. No sirens. No headlights. Just determination and coordination. As Ouedraogo's SUV pulled up to an aging factory building with a rusted gate, the surveillance team went quiet. He's entering the building, they whispered. Lights are on inside. Machinery sounds detected. Traoré gave the order, seal off the perimeter. No one gets out. Special forces fanned out around the building. Snipers climbed onto adjacent rooftops. All exits were locked. Then came the call through a megaphone. Attention inside. You are surrounded. Come out with your hands up. Do not resist. At first, silence. Then, the whirring of machines stopped. Lights went dark. Movement inside. Someone was trying to destroy evidence. Move in. Traoré ordered. The front door was rammed open. Soldiers poured in, weapons raised, but there was no firefight. Instead, what they found shocked even the most seasoned officers. Massive industrial printing presses, still warm to the touch. Rolls of high-grade paper. Open buckets of special ink. Half-printed banknotes scattered across the floor. The smell of chemicals filled the air. It was a full-scale currency production operation, hidden in plain sight. Ouedraogo was arrested on the spot, along with 11 others found inside. Most surrendered quietly, stunned that they had been discovered. As they were being handcuffed, President Traoré walked through the scene, eyes scanning the equipment. This is it, he said softly. This is how they plan to collapse our nation. Captain Diallo approached, holding a folder. Mr. President, we found something else, files listing names, payments, transactions. It's not just Ouedraogo. Traoré flipped through the papers. His face tightened. Politicians. Business elites. Even foreign names. It was never just about money, he muttered. It was about power. Control. Treason. That night, the factory was secured and sealed. Evidence was transported under armed escort. The arrests made headlines the next morning, but the true shock was still to come. Because the names in those files would soon reveal a conspiracy that reached deep into Burkina Faso's leadership, and beyond its borders. And this was only the beginning. Inside the dimly lit interrogation room, the air was heavy. François Ouedraogo, the wealthy printing house owner turned key suspect, sat quietly, flanked by lawyers who urged him to stay silent. But it wasn't Ouedraogo who broke first, it was Pascal Tapsoba, the technical manager of the factory. I want to speak, he said, trembling. Please. I didn't want to do this. What followed was a confession that would shatter any illusion that this was merely a domestic crime. They said it was a standard printing job, Pascal began, voice cracking. Then they forced us to print fake money. When we hesitated, they threatened to kill our families. President Traoré, who had taken personal charge of the interrogation process, leaned in. Who gave you the orders? There are big men, Pascal whispered. Politicians. Businessmen. Even foreigners. They said we would collapse the economy, destroy trust in the franc, and remove you from power. Traoré's face turned stone cold. Give me names. One by one, names poured out, each one more explosive than the last. Former ministers, parliamentarians, prominent businessmen. Then came the international shock, links to individuals from France, Switzerland, Dubai. Transfers, communications, financial backing, everything carefully documented in files seized from the factory. The most damning revelation came from the next suspect, former finance minister Jérôme Carré. I was involved, he confessed, after hours of questioning. But I wasn't the mastermind. I was a bridge. To who? The prosecutor asked. Meetings were held in Abidjan, he answered. Instructions came from Paris. Approvals from Washington. They said President Traoré was dangerous. That he was uniting with Mali and Niger. That he had to be stopped. The plan was simple, yet devastating. Release the fake money, cause inflation, trigger social unrest, spark protests, prompt military intervention, remove Traoré, install a transitional puppet government. I was promised the position of interim prime minister, Carré admitted. These revelations hit like a thunderclap. This wasn't just corruption. It was an organized campaign of economic terrorism, an attempt to turn the people against their leader by emptying their wallets and crushing their savings. Traoré convened another press conference. With the seized counterfeit money stacked behind him, he held up a note. Can you tell the difference between this and the real thing? He asked. The room was silent. This is not just paper. This is a weapon. And those who wielded it will face justice. The names were projected on a massive screen. And as journalists gasped, the nation stood stunned. Their trust had been betrayed, not just by criminals, but by the very people they had once elected. As the investigations deepened, the confessions took a darker and more international turn. The puzzle pieces were beginning to fit, not into a local conspiracy, but into a grand, cross-border scheme. Interrogators focused their attention on François Ouédraogo once again. Under pressure, and against the wishes of his legal team, he finally cracked. Yes, he said. We printed the money. But it wasn't my idea. It was brought to me. By whom? Jérôme Carré, he revealed. He said, either you do this job, or your business disappears. The former finance minister had already begun cooperating. And what he laid out was nothing short of shocking. There was a blueprint, Carré explained. They called it the four-phase strategy. Phase 1, print and inject counterfeit money into the market to spark inflation. Phase 2, erode public trust in the banking system, fuel social unrest. Phase 3, organize protests and labor strikes, spread narratives of government failure. Phase 4, collaborators in the military would seize the opportunity, launch a coup and install a transitional government. And who was funding it? Carré hesitated. The money came from abroad. Each month, $10 million was deposited into various accounts. Which country? Investigators asked. I don't know, he replied. But the transfers came through European banks, sometimes from Dubai, sometimes from Switzerland. Each time, a different account, a different name. Clean, but coordinated. The digital forensics team quickly got to work. Swift records were pulled. Transaction logs traced. They found encrypted communications between conspirators and unknown entities operating from foreign soil. President Traoré held another national address. "This was never just about me," he told the people. "It was about our sovereignty. About their fear that an independent Burkina Faso, allied with other African nations, would break the chains of economic dependence." International media began taking notice. The BBC, Al Jazeera, and African press all reported on the confessions and financial trails. Some Western outlets attempted to frame Traoré as an authoritarian clamping down on opposition, but the evidence was undeniable. The factory existed. The money was real. The confessions were recorded. Support flooded in from across Africa. The leader of Mali said, "This is not just an attack on Burkina Faso. It's an attack on Africa's economic freedom." The president of Niger echoed, "We must stand with Traoré. This is modern colonization, through currency." Traoré called for action, not revenge, but reform. "Let this be the moment Africa wakes up," he declared. "Not to fight with weapons, but to protect our money, our dignity, and our future." The conspiracy was global. But so, too, would be the response. What began as a national scandal was now evolving into a continental awakening. Traoré's firm stance, backed by concrete evidence and bold transparency, ignited a powerful wave of support across Africa. From Dakar to Dar es Salaam, the message was clear: the battle against counterfeit currency was not Burkina Faso's alone, it was a frontline in the fight for Africa's economic sovereignty. In a televised address to the African Union, President Traoré spoke directly to his fellow leaders. "Our enemies no longer wear military uniforms," he said. "They come with bank transfers, with fake money, with economic manipulation. If we do not defend our currencies together, we will all fall, one by one." The speech was electric. Within days, the African Union convened an emergency summit in Addis Ababa. 54 nations were represented. On the agenda, joint measures against economic sabotage via counterfeit currency. As Traoré joined via video conference, he didn't mince words. "This was not just an attack on our economy," he declared. "It was an attempt to reinstall a system of economic colonization, where our currencies are controlled from abroad, and our futures dictated by foreign interests." The room responded with thunderous applause. Then, country after country shared their own disturbing findings. The Kenyan delegate rose, "We recently intercepted fake US dollars entering through Mombasa. The source was unclear. Now we understand." The Tanzanian representative added, "We've detected fake euros circulating in Dar es Salaam." All pointing to a coordinated effort. The Ugandan finance minister concluded, "This is an organized attack. It's time for an organized defense." Together, they adopted Traoré's proposals. Establish the African Monetary Security Commission, AMSC, a continental body tasked with monitoring and neutralizing financial threats. Create a shared intelligence network, to track counterfeit activities across borders. Develop a standardized anti-counterfeit system, including joint research on advanced holograms, inks, and security features. Explore the long-term vision of a common African currency, independent of former colonial monetary frameworks. Back in Burkina Faso, seized counterfeit machines were not destroyed. Instead, they were transformed. The central bank's new security laboratory was born, staffed by young Burkinabe engineers trained to turn the enemy's tools into defensive technologies. They studied the counterfeiters' techniques, then built stronger protections. President Traoré visited the lab personally. "This," he told the engineers, "is how we win, not just by fighting the old, but by building the new. You are the guardians of our future." In a matter of weeks, what began as a covert attack had triggered a continental movement. Africa was no longer asleep. It was alert, united, and ready. The war on fake money had become a war for self-determination. 10 days after the first raid, the people of Burkina Faso gathered in front of the central bank. On a raised platform stood President Ibrahim Traoré, flanked by armed guards, government officials, and a